So this is what I am hoping people will share. Well, obviously we can see your name, where you're from, if you teach, what you teach, and at what school, and a sentence, and I do mean just a sentence of your involvement so far in Inside Out. Okay, so Hannah, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm Hannah Davis Tayeb, and I'm originally from the United States and grew up in Toronto, Canada, but I've been living in Paris for 34 years. And I'm doing a project between the American University of Paris and a prison called La Santé Prison, which I've been doing since 2019. And I was trained by Walls to Bridges, which is a Canadian organization, as you know, that was originally started as part of Inside Out and took somewhat of its own shape. And my first connection with Inside Out through my sister Simone Davis was a visit with some French prison chaplains and prison leaders to Graterford in like 2013 or something. It was really, really special.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so,
I probably met you then, right?
oh yeah, we met. I remember well. You were
Yeah.
there. And
Mhm.
Aaron was there, and my sister Simone was there, and we with about 10 prison people important in the prison chaplaincy and also prison leadership, and we visited the men in Graterford and had a fantastic
Wow.
connection. And
Cool.
I'd been wanting to do some kind of Inside Out project in France ever since, and it finally got started in 2019, and it's been going since then.
Cool. Well, we'll want to hear more about it. Nigel.
Nigel Boyle from Pitzer College in Claremont, California. I've been involved with Inside Out since 2015. If you'll allow me to share screen for, oh no, I'm not allowed to share screen.
Oh, hold on. There you
go. I was just going to show you what 2 days ago we had the graduation of our third BA cohort at CRC Prison down the road here. This is a BA program built on Inside Out curriculum. And so in shot here, you have our graduating third cohort, plus the members of our fourth cohort that we've now admitted. So we're pretty happy about that. So anyway, but that's the highlight of my summer so far.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Congratulations. That's great. That is great. Okay. Let's see. Stephen?
Steve Sims. Well, let's see. I grew up in Canada, so I'm originally Canadian. I lived in the US for 20 years or so. I'm currently at Bridgewater State University in Massachusetts. I've taught Inside Out since 2017. I've taught at both a medium security men's prison and a county facility for the last 2 spring semesters. The highlight of my summer so far was receiving an email from a student who did Inside Out with me 2 years ago. She's in Ireland studying, she's done a 3-week study abroad course, and they toured one of the prisons there, and it's now a closed prison. And there was kind of a Inside Out kind of section in the prison, so I guess they must have taught it there. So there you go.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. Elaine.
Hi everybody. I'm Elaine McDougall. I'm in Baltimore, Maryland. So I took the training with Lori 2 summers ago, I believe, the 2022. So I haven't been able to do an Inside Out type class yet, but I'm teaching with Goucher College. They don't have the Inside Out model, but I'm trying to bring the Inside Out model to UMBC where I teach. It's just a process, and I just started teaching with GPEP through Goucher in the fall. So I'm still a little bit new. I taught I'm a director of the Writing Center at UMBC where I work, and I taught a tutor training course at the women's prison in Jessup in the fall, which was pretty cool. And then in the spring, I taught at the men's prison in Jessup a professional writing course, and that was really cool. So I did get to see some photos of one of my students who I had in the spring graduate. So that was a highlight. So thanks for having this.
Cool. Well, welcome. Sharice?
Hello, everyone. I'm actually working with the Halfway House, as I mentioned, and when I went through my training, I was previously working with choir in the Wasika Federal Prison, but they ended it because of COVID, so I couldn't exercise any of that anymore. So I decided to continue working through the Halfway House. And I haven't narrowed in how to form the course. I'm working with another colleague. She's in counseling and student personnel, and of course, I'm in criminal justice. And so we're bringing together a career course, something that they can actually benefit from in terms of doing we call assessments on themselves, and then we've kind of worked through some of the things that they would need to do while they're in the Halfway House. We will only have them for 60 days, so we're still trying to figure out what that course may look like. And then the other thing is we're trying to work through the cultural responsive approaches to it, because much of our career development information that we have in the in a lot of our discipline textbooks is not culturally responsive at all. So we're actually working through some of that kind of stuff. So
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all that. Joe?
Oh, hi, everyone. I'm Joe Schwartz. I'm zooming in from Philadelphia. I am a former Inside student, and in 2016, when I came home, I had the opportunity, I guess with the as COVID emerged, I had the opportunity to become a community student as the program carried on in new circumstances. Part of the Inside Out Training Institute. Since COVID began, we have been training virtually. I've been involved in a lot of things. It's really exciting for me to hear, and I'm fascinated to know about everybody's programs in different areas, because it's so enlivening to me. I recently I'm a research fellow with the Samuel Center for Social Connectedness, and I'm working in partnership with Laurie in the Inside Out program to talk about the impact of the training on the coaches, and the impact of the training on the participants. So it's very nice to be here today.
Welcome, Joe. And this is Dino. Dino.
Yeah, the cat.
Yes. Was asked to introduce. And the other one, Sean, is asleep, I'm sure. TL.
Hi, I'm TL. I'm from Temple, Philly. And yeah, like Joe said, well, I'm extremely fascinated by all the programs. I owe a bunch of impact stuff to Laurie and the rest of you, which will happen now that almost everything else in my world is slowed down. And I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Okay, welcome. Good to see you. Steve.
So sorry, I'm so sorry I'm late. What are we doing? Introducing ourselves briefly?
Yes, just
Okay.
very briefly.
Okay. Well, this really interested me. I've been teaching Inside Out for, I don't know, close to 20 years. Lori's my mentor and teacher. It was a life-changing experience for me. And I also work in the area with UNESCO of interreligious and intercultural dialogue. So this topic really spoke to me, and I have done some international stuff with Inside Out. And so this is a great subject. Thanks.
Great to see you, Steve. Anne?
Hi, everyone. Ann Schwartzman here. I work at the Inside Out Center, mainly helping to coordinate the Philadelphia area, but also monitoring state activity for Inside Out in Pennsylvania.
Okay. Let's see, Nadia?
Hello, everybody. I'm Nadia. I'm from Guadalajara in Mexico. And I started teaching Inside Out courses in 2017. And I had the opportunity to meet Lori when she came here. I think it was the same year or 2018. I think it was 2018. And last time I've been kind of like in a sabbatical for the past semester. The last Inside Out course I taught with my colleagues was last summer. It was a very interesting experience here in Puente Grande. But I'm in August, I'm moving to Arizona because I'm starting my PhD at ASU. So that's why I'm kind of like in the middle of a sabbatical. I haven't taught any courses since January, and I'm kind of like concentrating on the change of life I'm about to experience. And I thought it would be great to get more involved with Inside Out, even though I've been part of the program since 2017. I was telling Haley and Lauren that a professor in ASU, when I told him we taught Inside Out here in Mexico, he was like, oh, wow, I didn't know like you had that in Mexico. And I was like, I think it's good to get involved and to listen to all your experiences and to share our experiences with Inside Out here in Mexico and to get involved with Inside Out at ASU. I would love that. So I'm excited.
Have a very, very powerful program.
Oh, great.
It's a great place to go. That's Kevin. Did you talk with Kevin?
No.
Else? Oh, okay. Okay. Well, thank you. Good to see you. And Lauren?
I'm Lauren Mays. Let's see, I started with Inside Out when I was a student at Temple University. I took my first Inside Out class in 2006, and I took another one in 2009. Then I had the privilege to start teaching Inside Out when I joined the Department of Criminology at Vancouver Island University up in British Columbia. So I've heard a number of opposite trajectories of Canadians jumping down to the States. I am the other direction. I have jumped up here to Canada. So yeah, it's beautiful and just happy to be here for the conversation today. Thanks.
Well, many of us may be joining you. Oh, did I say that?
I know, Lori, you have your open invitation. You can
Good.
Anytime. You can stay with Joanne.
All right. And Haley, so could you introduce yourself and then start us off on an introduction to this topic?
Sure, no problem. I'm Haley Zettler. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Criminal Justice at the University of North Texas. And I started Inside Out at the University of Memphis when I was a faculty member there in 2018. And then when I came to UNT, started the program, taught the first one in fall 2022, and we've taught 3 times since then. And how this all came about was I was at the 25th anniversary celebration that I think I see familiar faces from in November. And I was sitting through all the sessions and, all of the good Inside Out energy and brain power and all of the camaraderie. And I was just sitting there hearing about all these programs, all of these different ideas, and how it really has grown across the world. And I think I was in a presentation by some faculty in Ireland, and I thought in the back of my head, I wonder if anyone has ever done an Inside Out exchange program within a different country. So kind of the exchange within the exchange, and taking Inside Out students from one country and letting them go into an Inside Out course in another country and kind of having this kind of cross-cultural comparison. And I teach study abroad courses separate of Inside Out, so I'm really passionate about that opportunity for students. And I just thought, is this a good idea? Is this crazy? Is it something that could even happen? So I happened to find Lori in the hall in between sessions, and I said, hey, I just had this idea sitting in this session. Has anyone ever brought that to you? And Lori's like, email me. And as I'm saying this whole pitch to her, Lauren was standing there, and Lauren was like, hey there, I'm in Canada and I would love to do something like this. Here's my email. So really it was just kind of a spur of the moment idea and connection. And I think it was right place, right time, and obviously right people. So I think we're at the point now that we want to kind of explore what this could look like, how we would actually make this happen, different things we would need to consider. And then hopefully following today, maybe those that would be interested in pursuing a kind of more detailed discussion of partnerships and starting those kind of more logistical conversations to connect.
So I'm leaving it up to you and Lauren and Nadia to facilitate. And I don't know if you want to use the hand raise function, but you can feel free to go ahead.
Awesome, thank you. So yeah, Haley, like Haley mentioned, this kind of came about super organically, and you know, when you mention things in front of Lori and other people can hear them, all of a sudden, you know, now there's a whole meeting about it, and so it's fantastic to you know, just be around this community and being able to talk about some new ideas. And so when Haley and Nadia and I were talking about how we wanted to have this conversation today, we thought it might be a good idea to talk just briefly a little bit about how like how Inside Out's working and what it looks like in some different international contexts. And so so Nadia, I don't know if you'd like to maybe start us off by sharing a bit about like what the Inside Out program is a bit like down where you're doing that, and then if there's anybody else who wants to share about how their programs might be different in different contexts, that'd be welcome too.
Thank you, Lauren. Yes, I just want to say it's funny for me how now I was also telling Haley and Lauren how I ended up here, because when I saw the email from Lori inviting us all to participate in this conversation, I was thinking more, I didn't have the opportunity to go to the conference last year. I would love to do that maybe in the coming conferences, for the coming conferences. But when I saw the email, I thought that with no background about Haley's conversation at the conference with Lori, I was thinking that this session would be about sharing international experiences with Inside Out. So I was like, oh, this is great. Maybe I can like be there. And then when I talked to Haley and Lauren, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, now I get it. But it's still, I think it's good, because if we want to talk about making Inside Out international, I think that first of all, we need to know how the international experiences, where they are and how they've been working for the past years. So I think it's great. Everything worked out fine, I guess. And like I said at the beginning, I started working in Inside Out thanks to Danielle Strickland. She's a professor who brought Inside Out to Mexico. She's from Virginia, I think, but she's been living here in Mexico for more than 20 years. And I met her, and she was like, she talked to me about bringing this program to Mexico. And I was just coming back from Argentina, where I did my master's. And Argentina has a very big program, prison education program. One of the, how do you say, the oldest in Latin America. Like the program has been running since 1985. So I was there and I was part of it, and I was like super excited with all like everything about prison education. So when I talked to Danielle, I was like, oh my God, this is wonderful. In Mexico, I think we need more programs. We like barely have 3 universities in the whole country that offer face-to-face higher education programs to people in prison. Like there's only 3 universities in the whole country. Here where I live, which is Guadalajara in Jalisco, like we don't have, at the time, 2016, we didn't have anything. Now, I think they just started offering a course that we kind of like are against it because it comes within the prison, and that might, like, for us, that loses like all the sense of what an education program in prison should be, which is something that I think with my experience working with Inside Out, like, I think it's one of the greatest benefits from the Inside Out pedagogy. It's how it first of all, it comes from outside the prison, like it comes from the universities, like the universities in a way are actually getting involved with people in the prison and not the correctional administration, and how it brings together students from the outside. Here in Mexico, I have been able to realize that this particular experience, bringing the students from the outside to the inside and making all this work and collaborative projects inside the readings and all the different dynamics and activities and all the exchanges that are able to happen there for the time that the session lasts, 60 minutes, something like that. That's been one of the, for me, the greatest impacts the program has had, at least here in Mexico. We hear from the students inside, we hear from the students outside, how being able to talk to people that are from they say the real world, right? From the outside world, like how that changes their whole experience and gives a different meaning to their experience living inside the prison. So for me, I just want to say, and I want to say, and maybe you've been discussing that in different sessions. For me, this is my first session with Inside Out, getting to know you, and I'm very happy. And I just want to say it because I haven't had the chance to say it before. I think that's one of the greatest impacts of the program, how it is able to give that experience. And also students in the outside, that they talk to us all the time, they talk to me, they are able to open up their minds and to understand how it is, how life is for incarcerated women and men, something that sometimes they don't even think about. And that changes sometimes. I had students from the psychology, sometimes we go with students from psychology and criminology mainly. And I've talked to students that after going after participating in the Inside Out program, like they changed their whole profession, they decided to change their whole professional trajectory, and now they're involved somehow with other with other programs here in Guadalajara. Or I have a student who was part of the program like 2 years ago, or in 2021, 2021, and now she's in France. She left, she was doing her master's in France, and now she told me, she just texted me like 3 days ago to tell me that she's working in an organization for prisoners in France. And that was just mainly because of how participating in the program shaped her professional path. So I think that's been one of the greatest impacts, here in Mexico with my experience in Guadalajara. Dealing with the prison, especially after COVID, has been difficult.
Nadia.
Yes, sorry, I think
Sorry.
I've been taking a lot of time, but yeah.
No, you're great. You're great. No, definitely. And we will definitely have more for you to share later. I just wanted to maybe let Lauren talk about her experience, and then if anyone else has taught in another country or has that experience, if they want to share anything about that.
Yeah, thanks, Haley. And, Nadia, I think, what you said in there just highlights how universal the Inside Out experience really is, because, those same impacts that you see with your students, I see with my students, I saw with my peers when I was a student in the class. And so I think that's one of the really wonderful things about Inside Out. And so, I think it's also hard when we're teaching within a certain context to realize, to know exactly what we're doing that's unique, and like, what is it about our context that's driving that uniqueness. So From having a bit of perspective on taking the class in the States and then teaching it up here, up in Canada. I mean, the biggest difference that I've noticed really is just how we're treated by the corrections staff and how, and, I wasn't privy to a lot of the planning with corrections that took place, between House of Corrections when I took the class there, or Cambria, for that class. So I don't know what dealing with corrections on that end of things was like, but from a, kind of a being in the class perspective, like the way that we're treated by BC Corrections has been very different, and has made the way that the classes run a lot smoother than I think it would have been had we had different relationship with our local correctional partners. But there are clearly differences between Canada and the United States, but there are so many similarities. So, I'm interested to hear if there's anybody else who has experience teaching in different contexts. But it sounds like a lot of folks here are based in the States, but it sounds like there's a smattering of some other experience as well. So I don't know if anybody wants to speak to any experiences they've had about teaching inside out outside of the States, or if you have any thoughts on that. Hannah, did I see your hand?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I had that experience. So as I said, I was very excited about starting Inside Out in France. At the time, I was directing a study abroad program, and it wasn't possible to do Inside Out with study abroad students who are in town for such a short period of time. Then I started teaching at American University of Paris, which, as you may or may not know, is it's like a 4-year international university. It's called American, but it's about a third Americans. People come from all over the world, and there was interest there in doing an Inside Out Walls to Bridges style class. So I reached out to a local prison, and when I described the project, they weren't sure if I should be talking to education or cultural programs. And because of cultural differences and political differences, like in France, like the education system's very organ. I don't want to say rigid, but it's very rigid. So it's very stable. So it's not that easy to just kind of march in and say, okay, this class is going to take this form and it's going to be totally different and everything. So at American University of Paris, so the education structure within the prison that I reached out to, I did teach English. They hired me to teach English there for a while, but they couldn't really accommodate the fluidity of the Inside Out approach. So I've been doing it as a cultural program. The disadvantage being that the inside students don't get credit for it, though they get a certificate, obviously. The advantage being that I don't have to only work with people with high school diplomas, which also another cultural difference. In France, having your BAC, your high school diploma, is like a huge deal. So the huge majority of people in prison don't have it. And so if I had gotten into the education structure, I'd be working with a very, very thin layer of incarcerated people. So in some ways, I'm really happy that I'm in cultural programs, but it also means that people aren't getting credit. So it's been incredibly beautiful and wonderful, as you all know. And starting about a year and a half ago with colleagues, we started actually a small nonprofit. It's not a big of a deal, but called Dialogue and Transformation, with the idea that we were going to try and work towards spreading the Inside Out Walls to Bridges model into French universities and to build international connections. And so we started out by reaching out to our French colleagues who are doing a lot of amazing things, though not in this model, but just really cool classes. And so I think it's relevant. I mean, I can talk about a lot of issues related to this. I mean, one thing I'd really like to say to this particular group is, like, the way that I've been doing the class is in the regular semester class, it takes place in French. So even though American University of Paris is an English language university, I'll recruit students who speak French. And it's been really incredible, incidentally, in parentheses, because in France, there's really a lot of incarcerated people who are not from French origin, or their parents are not from French origin. It's like post-colonial. I mean, you know, in each country, there's different people who are overrepresented. So in France, it's people who are not born in France or whose parents were not born in France. And my students from American University of Paris are also from all over the world. It's unbelievably moving. So we have like Arabic, Chinese, just really, really rich classroom experience. But anyway, the way I've been doing it is having the class takes place in French during the semester. And in the summer, I've been reaching out to we have a 6-week summer program. We go to the prison twice a week. And I've been reaching out to students who have like low intermediate French. I still want people with some French so that they can have a direct contact with the incarcerated participants, the inside participants. And I'm really excited to talk about this with you guys, because what I would actually like, and I tried to reach out through email, it just apparently didn't really work that well, is if you have students who've already done Inside Out and who know at least a small amount of French. I'm saying B1, which is like they can sit in a conversation and do a one-on-one talk and small group work. Then to consider coming to summer school and doing the program, Prison Education Workshop. It has the effect of what Haley, what you and Lauren were talking about, which is the people who've already done prison work in the States or in another country can be like, oh, wait, so, you know, this fits in with what I did there, but this is different, and have the excitement of that comparison, and also just bring, you know, a lot of fresh thinking in. And another thing we're doing this summer is we have 2 speakers who are formerly incarcerated Americans who are going to be speaking inside the French prison. So this really means a lot, because there's a real fascination with a lot of the inside students with Black American culture, and it's sort of inspiring. And a lot of them have already read, like they've read Angela Davis or Malcolm X, and they just like, wow. So this kind of idealization. And so we're having a speaker, Andre Ward, who's from John Jay, who's formerly incarcerated and now is running an institute at John Jay, and also Adnan Khan, who you might also have heard of, who was a California, formerly incarcerated American activist. And they're both coming to the class and speaking to the French students. So that's also another sort of cool intercultural connection where you're sort of bringing something from both sides.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. I mean, that language piece is really interesting, because when we were having our kind of our preliminary conversation, and Nadia brought up the fact that like most of her students don't speak English, and then I'm like, well, most of my students don't speak Spanish. So, you know, when Haley and I had been talking about this, you know, I didn't even think about the whole language barrier situation in an international exchange, right? Like to send students to France, even though, you know, technically Canada is a bilingual country, most people are not bilingual. Most people in British Columbia don't speak workable French, or, you know, any sort of French really. So, so I think, you know, when we're talking about how would we actually put some sort of inside out exchange into action, that language piece would be quite a consideration that we would need to contend with if we were going to be going into places where English is not the predominant language. And so, you know, in thinking about this, we started laying out kind of, okay, like what would some of these programs look like? So Haley, I don't know if you want to talk about, because I know you've had some conversations with your dean about how this might look, and some of the kind of particulars you started thinking about.
Yeah. So the first thing that kind of came to mind was like, what would the length and format of the program look like? Because it's probably not realistic to have students go, you know, for a whole semester, or even maybe a longer study abroad, 2-3 weeks. So something shorter, That's part of an existing course that might be optional for students that are in the current Inside Out cohort of a specific university. We have a program through our study abroad office that's a like optional field trip that's international, and they don't have to pay tuition for that. They just have to pay the cost of that field trip. It's usually about a week to 10 days, usually done over like spring break or towards the end of the May semester. Trying to think through that. Another idea my dean had was maybe creating an exchange with the two universities that are partnering, for example, and having a combined class taught by the two Inside Out instructors from the different countries, where they actually maybe leverage technology such as Zoom and bring those students together from both sides prior to the exchange happening. Because as you all know, another key part of Inside Out is the rapport building and the trust building, which takes, you know, many weeks to really build. So to not have any existing kind of contact with one another and then just bringing students from another country into a prison to sit along with them for a week or two, it might be a little abrupt. So we were talking about maybe even co-teaching a class, having that already established contact with one another, at least semi-regularly. So then when the swap happened, they would already have that rapport. So, you know, maybe co-teaching a class, and then 1 week, the students from one country go visit the other, and then the next week, or, you know, some other point in the semester or the academic year, there's like the reverse swap. So kind of a dual, you know, 1 week here and then the other students come the other week. So just thoughts, definitely open to suggestions or other things to think through with that format.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges is just having having things match up between both institutions. Like, for instance, we have this field, it's not called a field trip, field school is what they call it. And it can take a variety of forms, and it sounds similar to what you guys have, where it's like a week or two. Ours is attached to a course that has tuition paid for it as well, though. So, you know, I feel like there's a lot of places where universities and colleges in different places could get on board together and, you know, okay, you can co-teach this class. You know, I can see potentially some of the hurdles there being the communication between the two educational institutions. And so, yeah, I don't know if anybody else has thoughts on different models that they seem potentially being effective. Stephen? Oh, you're muted.
Hi, everybody. Hannah, we met in Paris, didn't we? Yeah. And that was a great awakening for me. And I remember you got me in contact with a guy who was doing a very progressive prison.
Exactly, Pascal Vion. He's now running. He's still higher up on the hierarchy now. Yeah, that was wonderful.
Yeah, that was a great connection. And I just had lunch with a colleague who teaches study abroad classes, and he's doing a very inventive one. And I think this would be amazing to do an Inside Out class in Paris, and to actually give credit to University of Oregon students who could be there for, I don't know, they're much more flexible about the length of classes in the summertime, but say a 6-week class, something like that, and it would be held in French. I could imagine, you know, facilitating that one myself. I think it would be an extraordinary experience to be able to do that. It would make take study abroad into a completely different direction that no one had ever imagined. And for me, in my own experience in intercultural, interreligious dialogue, you know, for me, the model of that has been the Inside Out class, which I started teaching, I guess, in 2007. So the idea of combining the Inside Out experience, which is so basic to being human, and actually doing it in France in a foreign language with American students, this, you know, this wouldn't be a question of having wine and coffee, you know, in cafes in Paris. This would be something much deeper, and I think you could get a cohort of students to do that. Anyway, I'm just thinking aloud right now, but it seems like an extraordinary opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, I mean, that's the purpose of this conversation, is to just think out loud right now, right? We're just, kind of thinking through this ourselves. And so, so yeah, all thoughts are very welcome on that. So thank you. Nigel?
Yeah, just delighted to hear this conversation, and so many wonderful things popcorned at Laurie's conference last November. I had the same experience as Haley. I was at that panel about Ireland. My other citizenship is actually Irish, so I met the people from Ireland that were there. I had a chance to visit them in Ireland last spring, and also go inside the prisons that they work at and meet some of the students there. And so I just got very excited about this. One part of what I did while I was there, as I have a history as an academic administrator as well, they had me meet with their administrators, the provosts of these Irish universities in Derry and Cork. And I was kind of being used as an evangelist to persuade people this isn't just an interesting form of prison education. This is an amazingly high quality form of higher education, period. The benefits to your traditional students, so they were using me for that purpose. But anyway, I'm super excited about this. So with my colleague Katharina Surak at Cork, we're now hoping in the next spring semester to connect an Inside Out class that she's going to be teaching there with an Inside Out class we're going to be teaching here via Zoom. So we'll actually have the classes connected via Zoom. But I'm just excited to hear what Haley and Hannah are talking about with study abroad more generally. I think a panel at an upcoming one of the national conferences for study abroad advisors would be a great idea, because I think there would be a lot of interest. Pitzer has exchanges, and we've been talking about trying to, because we have a lot of outside students now who've done Inside Out classes, that wouldn't it be great if when they went abroad they could do something equivalent there. So we've been trying to work this out case by case, but I think it's hard for a small institution to do that by itself. If there are a bunch of us together working on this, maybe new exchange agreements then could be made with institutions that abroad that are doing Inside Out. So I just think this is tremendously exciting, and just super happy to see this conversation. But I think the study abroad world would really be very impressed by this. This is cutting edge higher education, cutting edge pedagogy that I think study abroad administrators across the country would be very interested in.
Thanks, Nigel. And it's great to hear that y'all are going to be using Zoom to connect with the two classes, because I think that's definitely something that we were thinking through as well when creating this, and great advice to look into the study abroad kind of area to get support as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the challenge is just going, is just those logistical pieces. And, there's the, what does it look like on the university side of things? What does it look like on the institutional side of things? And so, one of the places where I see an international exchange not being an issue ties back into that correctional partnership we have, in that we have international students who take Inside Out and have no problem with their security clearances. So I don't foresee a problem necessarily. Like, I could see that potentially being a hurdle in some places in terms of getting the students cleared, the outside students cleared. But, at least with the institutions that we're working with, that has not seemed to be a concern. And then, Nigel, you were talking about joining classes together over Zoom, and it kind of depends on the facility, but it seems like they kind of have a bit of a lower threshold for their security concerns when the class is happening online. From their point of view, they're not worried so much about contraband coming in and that sort of thing, and like the physical concerns that some of the institutions have around security. So I can also see, the leveraging that sort of technology to try to bring together people across borders. Because, there's the educational part, the educational institutions, the correctional institutions, and then there's the money part, right? And so like, yes, it would be awesome to take a group of students for 6 weeks to Paris, but like, who is paying for that? And it's great if students can have the ability to pay for that. And maybe some of the institutions we work for have some study abroad funding that can be supported for that sort of thing. But thinking about, how we could find funding to make funding not a barrier for students when, for physically talking about taking students physically to other countries, that there's probably quite a high cost attached to that. So it would be, I think, just another thing to think through in terms of access to those classes and who would ultimately be able to take advantage of them. If there weren't some less traditional funding mechanisms available. So yeah, that's another place where, a virtual delivery mechanism might be really, useful in terms of breaking down financial barriers that might keep this sort of thing from being able to happen if that happens to become the hurdle. So I know Inside Out is better in person, but it is still quite good online. And we've had some really great success with that up here. And I can see where that would be really helpful in a international context.
Thanks, Lauren. So I know for me, after having kind of just this initial idea, I met with my dean and kind of just gave her the idea, and then kind of wanting to make sure that I have other people that are interested in partnering before the next steps of involving the study abroad office in my university and figuring out what this would actually look like. Because as Lauren and Nigel pointed out, there's going to be multiple actors at the university level and administration that, would work this out. But a lot of our universities have MOUs with other universities to partner, to co-teach. So I don't foresee it not being able to be achieved. It's just figuring out the logistics within each person's university, figuring out who needs to come to the conversation, and then figuring out kind of what the initial steps are. So if anyone has anything else that they think we should think about as we kind of move forward with this idea, I'm happy to hear that or talk about anything else.
I'd just like to say, I think it's one thing that if you do, one thing I considered was trying to get funding, like foundation funding, to make it financially possible for people who'd experienced incarceration in the United States, like to come as students in the program. Or I was also interested in community college teachers, American community college teachers, which I just happen to have a community college teacher as a student now. It seemed to me those two groups, I don't know if we're going to, this would be something you'd have to get funding for, but people who can't actually afford the program, and people who've experienced incarceration, I think there'd be something incredibly powerful about having a student in the program who's coming into the French prison, who's experienced incarceration in the States. So I just think that's something that you could think about too when you're thinking about trying to raise external funding, or how to make it financially possible for people.
So Hannah, that just raised something in my mind, and and I don't know if France has a lot of different rules or regulations around who they're letting come in, but Canada seems to be quite strict about people with criminal histories coming into the country in the first place, and we've actually had an issue with a number of our students who have even been coaches for Inside Out, not being able to come over the border to the US to come participate in like conference, the anniversary conference and things like that. And so, you know, that border crossing, I know can be challenging, and sometimes it can be no big deal at all. Like Lori, I remember, you know, all the money and time spent on prepping one of the former students in Philly to, I believe, come up to Canada, and then it was no issue at all. And then, you know, so I think the, you know, crossing borders part of it, again, just adds another layer, not that it's not doable, just that it's another consideration to have to work through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my experience so far has been, I tried to bring into the classroom a French person who'd experienced incarceration, and that did not go through. However, the two Americans, they maybe it's because they've become sort of well-known people or something, but anyway, that went right through. But you can't always tell what's going to happen with the corrections. I mean, with permissions and things, so sometimes it doesn't seem to make much sense.
Yeah, and I think that's another part of the conversation is obviously you have to get your existing program in the correctional institution you're teaching at to be on board with this idea as well. So you have the university, whoever you're also exchanging with, but then making sure that your facility will be able to accommodate and be open to people coming in, and if there are any restrictions and what that looks like. I know for my students on the outside, they have to go through like a volunteer training and have to get the background check and all of that and the timing of all that. But then there's some loopholes with kind of those that just come 3 or 4 times. So trying to figure out those logistics also with the correctional institution, I think is going to be an important part of, you know, the separate conversations with each group and then bringing it together to figure out what will work best for those partners.
Haley, I wonder if we could go back to, were you kind of envisioning like the majority of a semester doing the exchange virtually? And a second question with that is, does that include the people on the inside as well in both prisons? And then after that, doing a short trip to one and or the other country? Is that kind of what you're playing with in your head?
In my ideal world, I think that would be the best setting, because I think then the rapport between both inside and outside across the borders, right, has already been established, at least somewhat. But again, depending on the partners and the institution, the correctional institution they're at, and also the international partner and the time differences. That's something we haven't talked about, is time differences for virtual classes. If that would be realistic, or if it would be just kind of a smaller component. I know that my facility that I teach in, they're just now getting the opportunity to use Zoom. And that really hasn't even been tested out in the Inside Out class. I don't even know if they're on board with that. So I was even thinking worst case scenario, some kind of, you know, at least the outside students could meet each other on Zoom, and maybe there could be some kind of correspondence, you know, maybe if we can't do virtual, between the inside and outside across the different countries. But then yes, having like 1 week where, say, my students went to Canada, from my outside students went to Canada, and were able to go meet the inside students and outside students there, and then vice versa, where that group of outside students would come here and they would have a week together. But again, it just probably depends on the specific partners and what they can accommodate.
Yeah. Thanks, Haley. I'm just looking at TL's comment in the chat and some of the response to that. And I guess, you know, kind of in my mind, when I was envisioning this, I was envisioning it more as kind of happening in the similar sense that like we've been working through this, and like you meet somebody and you're like, oh, you also teach Inside Out, like, and you're in another place, like maybe we could trade. I wasn't so much of thinking it as like training up new people who work at or like universities that we might already be partnered with. So that I think there's something there as well in terms of, you know, growing the network of places that can offer classes in this model. I I could see that as well. I hadn't been thinking of it in that way. I was kind of thinking, okay, we have this inside out network, like who wants to, who would want to do something like this? And then kind of, you know, from that smaller group, see, oh, maybe we have similar time zones that match or language needs that match, or do kind of go about it that way. But I could see kind of both of these different ways having value. Nigel, I see your hand.
Yeah, I had two thoughts. But firstly, I'm really keen on exploring the study abroad student exchange models as a way of moving this forward. So, you know, we send students to France all the time, and they learn all sorts of cool things about France. But if they were able to do an inside out class in connection with what Hannah was talking about, the amount that they would learn about France would be sort of exponentially increased. So if there's some way that we can work towards pooling knowledge about where we've had international students come here and do our study, and again, if you're a student coming to the United States, what better way to learn about the United States than by doing an inside out class? So I think pooling the information that we have about this would be very valuable. My second thought is that Laurie has an incredible group of trainers that do the inside, and I'm thinking specifically about Kenny Butler now, but who is one of our students who won a Fulbright and has international experience as well. But these trainers could be very useful to work with any institutions abroad that are looking into this, or they're doing inside out classes as visiting as speaker via Zoom, being speakers or working with faculty. So I think there's a ready-made group of formerly incarcerated people who have expertise now that I think will be great to get out to international to people abroad that are doing prison education and doing inside out.
So can I jump in? Thank you for that thought, Joe. Let me put you on the spot since you're one of the people he's talking about. Any thoughts?
Oh my God, it's kind of goosebumpy thinking, you know, these kinds of resources that we all have. For me, I mean, this is a very, very exciting conversation because we're only limited by what we can imagine. And when people are willing to think in a broader sense, you know, what a better way to learn about the world than through this experience of being able to examine some aspect of our culture that may mirror or may be different than in another country. I think that the coaches who are committed and demonstrated their long-term commitment to this vision would be very, very receptive to the kinds of conversations that we're having now, to explore the potential for this to expand beyond just what's going on in our local area. I mean, this is tremendous. So I'm very excited about it. And thank you for asking me what I thought.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm gonna have to go now. It's 11 p.m. here, and I'm afraid it's my bedtime. But have a good continuation.
Okay. Thanks for joining us. So I don't want to step in here, but Haley, Lauren.
Well, yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead, Laurie.
Where do you want to take this?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, like we said, we just really wanted to have an initial conversation about what this might look like. So, you know, I think if there's people who are interested in continuing this dialogue, who might want to take part in some sort of inside out exchange experience, and, you know, be part of trying to organize one, get in touch with Haley and I, and we can try to form a smaller working group around those who want to implement this kind of style of inside out. So I saw that Haley just put her email in the chat. I will do the same thing. And yeah, we look forward to hearing whether There's other people who want to get involved. It sounds like there might be. So it'd be great to see what we can all come up with, and perhaps there will be different ways to approach this as well. So yeah, it's exciting. I appreciate everybody taking the time to be here today.
Yes,
So,
thank you, everyone.
Go ahead.
Final thoughts from Lori?
Oh, Lord. Well, actually, my final thought is, I'm sure there are people who wanted to make it today but couldn't. So what you all might want to do is send something out to the listserv. Maybe once we pull this together, to be able to send the recording out to the listserv, and then ask people to be in touch with you if they would like to continue to explore. I think that's a good next step.
All right, that sounds great, Lori.
And you know,
Thank you, everyone.
One other thing you can do, if anybody feels like doing this, we have a a newsletter that's going to be coming out in the next week or two. If you want to write like a paragraph or two about this exchange and some of, you know, the kind of general idea, you can put that out there too. That's another place to ask for people to get involved. So that can just be sent to me, and then I'll take it from there.
Yeah, sounds good. You know, I don't know if it's practical to think that we could come up with like a framework that would work kind of universally, so to speak, for anybody interested in doing this. It might be, you know, I think it's because of the particularities of each institution and all of that. I feel like it'll be, you know, something that will just be unique in each situation, but maybe there will be, you know, some sort of framework that can at least help people out that are interested in doing something in this vein. So yeah.
I'm curious, some of the folks who maybe haven't said anything, not to put you on the spot, but does this, you know, generate some ideas for you in whatever your situation is? Stephen?
I mean, being Canadian, living in the US, well, I guess I don't know if I'm technically a dual citizen, but I have citizenship in both countries. So I have connections in Canada, right? Lauren, I assume similarly with you, just, you know, north-south, right? There might be some kind of natural organic connections.
Oh, you're fading.
There might be some natural organic connections between institutions like, you know, with Bridgewater and I don't know, like, you know, VIU. And, you know, we might be able to develop, you know, over time an exchange with specific institutions. I was thinking it might be a little difficult. Like I was trying to think through the exchange, and you might be, yeah, really need to have, you know, one summer students go, you know, if they're in the US, they go to Canada. The next summer, the students go Canada to the US. And we had these relationships. Like Bridgewater has a relationship with McGill in Montreal. So that, you know, drawing on those already existing relationships, even if I searched and I couldn't tell if McGill has is it Bridges Over Walls? Is that what the Canadian program? I don't know if they have one of those programs or not, but it might be drawing on those relationships, those institutional relationships might help.
I know that they don't have an Inside Out program. Okay. Last thoughts? Anyone?
I see Sharice's hand up. And you're muted.
I've been sitting here quietly listening to all the bouncing off the different ideas and what you're doing. I'm curious to know if I took students to South Africa to study the criminal justice system, and we went inside the facility there. So is this to establish an exchange, or can we bring students into your Inside Out class if they're not participants of exchange. Does that, I don't know if I, all right, so if our students have not participated, because the people who participate in Inside Out, we're separate departments, sociology, and then there's criminal justice. So sociology has an Inside Out course. So we haven't established one yet. So my question to you is, if our students have not participated in Inside Out program yet, and they want to go to see what the experience is in another country, is that possible? Or you're purposely setting up an exchange? We go here, you come here. Is that?
I mean, I think it's possible. I mean, anything's really possible right now. This is a very, this is the time to say, oh, I envision it looking at this, looking like this, or, oh, I would only want people who've already taken Inside Out before to go on this exchange. Or it might be, this is a brand new Inside Out class. Nobody's ever taken Inside Out, and now they're taking Inside Out in France instead of taking Inside Out in British Columbia or something like that. But I think it could work kind of however the instructors wanted it to be set up. I could see both models working well. My kind of instinct it would be a new Inside Out class that would be happening, was kind of how I envisioned it. But from some of the things that other people were saying, it felt like maybe they were thinking about it in terms of students who had already been Inside Out alumni. So I could envision it working in a variety of different ways.
I think about it because in our department, we have a comparative criminology course, and rather than going to just as we went to South Africa and walked in those spaces of criminal justice, it would be nice to go to take a tour of Inside Out courses that are in Mexico, that are in Canada, that are in, and maybe that is something that's how I see the experience.
Yeah, I think that depending on your institution and the study abroad office and what different ways they deliver these courses, that would, dictate kind of what the format would be. For like our study abroad, you can take students it's up to the instructor to decide what the requirements are, right? If you want it to be people that have done Inside Out or are going to be taking Inside Out, and this is a component of that class, an optional component, or it's just a standalone study abroad course that's taught in the Inside Out format in another country. So I think it's up to the instructor to kind of dictate and whoever they're partnering with to see what they would want. I would think that the only thing with not having students that have done any Inside Out work before is just having like preparation, orientation meetings ahead of time so they can orient themselves at least, with the model.
The only thing that my antennas go up with is if there were exchange program and a group of students came from other countries and they're in our spaces, our correctional facilities can be very strict about all kinds of stuff. So even with us who go into just to do a tour, not even to be a part of a class, just to do a tour, we have to they do a background check on us. So, and we have with those kinds of strict guidelines, and we're talking about earlier cultural issues that may not be the same in other countries. So I think about those are the concerns I have for bringing people outside of our university into the correctional facility.
And that's a good concern to have. And it happens actually both ways. Like I was invited to a closing ceremony via Zoom in Canada next week. In order to be on Zoom for 1 hour, I have to go through all of this paperwork. It's so it's not, the United States is not the only place that does that, I guess. But
Lori,
all-
that is 2 pages. That is nothing like you've had to fill out before. You can fill those pages out. I know
all
you.
right. Just
All
the
right.
fact that I have to do
All
it.
these pages. I saw them. But yeah, it varies.
All right.
Busted.
Now I'm blushing. Joe?
On the heels of what Sharice was talking about, Kenny Butler spent time in Africa, and there were challenges that he faced, things that he did not anticipate. And I think that we have, the thing that impresses me about this exchange is that we have tremendous resources. And, when we talk about, international programming, we have some people who already have some experience and can lend a breadth and depth to ways to make this to make this work. I mean, this is tremendously exciting, and this is from a guy who, I work to train educators, and it's thrilling to me. This just compounds it to look at it in a bigger way. So I just wanted to mention that. So thank you for voicing that, Sharice.
Okay, so it's almost 5:15. I think we're probably ready to wrap. I think this was an excellent initial conversation. Let's do those follow-ups that we're talking about and see what we can do next.